Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the show where we explore the stories behind the trends shaping our world.
And today, we're looking at something huge, something that really stopped everyone for a moment.
Absolutely. We're diving into the recent UPS cargo plane crash, an event that just instantly flooded news feeds, social media, everywhere.
And with that flood came, well, a lot of confusion, a lot of guessing, really, before the actual facts started to surface.
Exactly. And that's our mission today. We want to cut through that noise for you, our listener. We're going to unpack the details we have from reliable sources.
Try to figure out what happened, what people online are saying, the speculation, and importantly, what this really means for global logistics.
Because this wasn't a minor incident. We know it involved a major UPS cargo plane. Tragically, there were fatalities, significant damage on the ground.
Yeah, and it immediately trended. Places like X, Reddit threads were buzzing.
So our goal is clarity. Separate fact from fiction, understand the immediate impact, and maybe the longer-term questions it raises about safety and commerce.
It's essential, really.
Yeah.
Setting that baseline of what's verified versus what's just, initial reaction. We're talking about complex tech, human factors, huge commercial pressures, all colliding.
Okay, let's get into it then. Let's break down the basics, the foundational facts we've managed to confirm from the sources available, what actually happened.
All right, so first off, the aircraft itself. Sources point to it being a heavy freighter, one of UPS's workhorses.
Right.
Likely candidates are a Boeing 757-200F or maybe a 767-300F. These are big planes designed purely for cargo.
Okay, a 757 or a 767. Does that difference matter much at this stage? I mean, they're both big Boeing jets.
It does, actually. Well, it matters for context. The 757 freighter is usually on denser domestic routes, maybe shorter international legs, carries maybe around 80,000 pounds.
Okay.
The 767 is quite a bit bigger. You see that more on the long-haul stuff, transcontinental, intercontinental. It can haul like over 120,000 pounds.
Ah, I see. So knowing which one tells investigators something about the flight's mission, the potential scale of the disruption?
Exactly. It helps frame the investigation, the kind of data they're looking for first. The immediate logistical hole it creates.
Got it. Now, the timing. This seemed a bit unclear initially. Reports said either shortly after takeoff or during the approach for landing. Why the uncertainty, and why are those phases so, critical?
Yeah, that initial ambiguity often happens with really catastrophic events. The debris field can be extensive, making the exact sequence hard to pin down immediately.
Makes sense.
But takeoff and landing, universally, they are the critical phases. Takeoff, you've got max power, low altitude, high speed, changing the plane's configuration with flaps and gear.
Right.
Very dynamic.
Right.
Landing, you're low, you're slow, relatively speaking, constantly adjusting to the air, lots of complex control movements needed. Both phases demand intense focus and leave very little room for error.
So if it happened right after takeoff, the investigation might look more closely at engines, climb performance.
Precisely. Engine power, initial climb procedures, maybe obstacles.
And if it was during landing approach?
Then the focus shifts. Navigation systems, instrument landing systems, weather like wind and visibility, pilot procedures for approach.
Okay. And you mentioned the narrow window for response.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In those phases, especially close to the ground, you're talking seconds. An incident can become a catastrophe incredibly fast. Any failure then, whether it's the machine or the person flying it, is just magnified hugely compared to cruising altitude.
Understood. What about the cargo itself? The sources mentioned a mixed domestic freight international parcels. Why is that mix relevant beyond just the value lost?
Well, it signals how deeply embedded this single flight was in the whole global commerce network. It wasn't just, say, bulk textiles. It was likely high-value, time-sensitive stuff.
Like what, for example?
Oh, high-tech components for a factory somewhere, maybe critical pharmaceuticals that need careful handling, or even just-in-time parts for an assembly line that could now be shut down.
So not just delayed packages for consumers, potentially real disruption to other industries.
That's exactly it. The loss sends ripples, sometimes big ones, through multiple supply chains at once. And for the investigators, cargo details matter too.
Oh, so?
Well, things like weight, how it was distributed, was it properly secured? While it's rare for major carriers, an improperly balanced load could affect handling, especially during those critical takeoff or landing phases. It's another piece of the puzzle they have to check.
Okay. So the plane crashes, the scene is secured. What happens next officially? Who steps in?
Right. Then the formal process kicks in immediately. You've got the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. They're the regulators.
Their job being?
They look at air traffic control communications, whether the airline was following all the rules, operational safety going forward, basically the regulatory side.
And then there's the NTSB. We hear about them a lot.
Yes, the National Transportation Safety Board. They are the independent investigators. Their only job is forensic. Find the probable cause. Not to assign blame, but to figure out why it happened and make recommendations so it doesn't happen again.
We often see images of the NTSB Go team arriving. Can you give us a bit more detail? What are they actually doing in those first critical hours, say the first day or two?
That Go team is a mix of specialists.
Yeah.
You've got people who know engines, aircraft structures, air traffic control, operations, weather, and crucially, human factors.
Human factors, like pilot error.
It includes that, but it's broader. How the humans interacted with the machine, the procedures, the environment. Anyway, their first job on site is securing the area, documenting everything meticulously, wreckage position, ground scars, everything.
Yeah.
And the absolute top priority is finding the recorders.
The black boxes.
Exactly. Though they're actually bright orange, usually.
Huh.
The cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, the flight data recorder, the FDR. Getting those is crucial.
The FDR, I understand, records tons of data points: speed, altitude, engine settings, control inputs.
Thousands of parameters, yeah.
Yeah.
It gives a detailed picture of what the plane was doing.
And the CVR, what does that add?
The CVR captures the sounds of the cockpit for typically the last 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the model. So pilot conversations, communications with air traffic control, any warning sounds like alarms, even just the ambient noise of the engines or switches being thrown.
Wow. So that gives insight into the crew's awareness, their decisions, how they reacted.
Invaluable insight. It helps piece together their thought process during an emergency. Were they confused? Did they follow procedure? Was there a missed call-out? Recovering and analyzing those recorders is job one, defining that whole initial phase.
Okay. And UPS's response, they issued a statement, condolences, cooperation, standard stuff, or is there more to read into that?
It's standard procedure, yes, but in the logistics world, that cooperation is absolutely vital. Their entire business model relies on trust, reliability, safety. The reputation is immediately on the line.
So they have a vested interest in finding the cause, too.
Absolutely. Plus, they have their own internal safety teams who immediately start working with the NTSB, providing maintenance records, pilot training histories, crew schedules. All that data feeds into the NTSB's investigation, especially for that human factors group.
Right. Now, let's circle back to the environment, the weather. Reports said moderate, but also mentioned low visibility or strong crosswinds. How can moderate conditions still be dangerous?
Moderate just means there wasn't, a hurricane or a major blizzard blanketing the area. But localized weather, especially near the ground during takeoff or landing, can be incredibly tricky.
Like a crosswind.
Exactly. A strong crosswind, especially when landing, forces the pilots to make significant control inputs just to stay lined up with the runway. They might be using almost full rudder, for instance. Now, combine that strong crosswind with low visibility.
Meaning they're relying more on instruments than looking outside.
Precisely. So the workload just shoots up dramatically. They're managing the wind, flying by instruments, communicating.
Yeah.
It gets very complex very quickly.
So the NTSB won't just note moderate weather. They'll be digging into very specific, localized data, looking for things like wind shear.
Oh, absolutely. Wind shear, that sudden change in wind speed or direction over a short distance, is a known hazard, especially at low altitudes. They'll analyze detailed meteorological data, radar returns, looking for exactly that.
Trying to see if the weather, even if just moderate overall, played a critical role at the exact moment things went wrong.
That's the key connection they're looking for. Was there, say, a mechanical issue that might have been manageable in clear, calm air? But when combined with that tricky crosswind or sudden visibility drop, it just overwhelmed the crew's ability to cope. That convergence point is often where the answers lie.
Which leads us right into the core question in so many crashes. Hashtag TAC 2.3 initial focus areas, the core mysteries.
The big dichotomy. Was it the machine or was it the human element? Mechanical failure versus human error. The sources confirm this is where the NTSB's initial focus splits.
Right. They start looking down two main paths.
Basically, yeah. On the mechanical side, they're looking for something specific and catastrophic. Did an engine fail in a way that sent parts flying into critical systems? Like an uncontained failure damaging hydraulics?
Or the hydraulic system itself failing?
Yeah. A major hydraulic failure could effectively freeze the controls. They'll examine the wreckage for signs of metal fatigue, fractures, component failures, really detailed forensic work on the metal.
And the other path, the human error side, that always seems to grab more headlines.
It does. And that involves scrutinizing the crew's actions or inactions. Were they spatially disoriented, maybe in those low visibility conditions? Did they miss a critical step in a checklist? Was there a miscommunication between the pilots or with air traffic control?
And this is where fatigue comes into play.
Exactly. Fatigue is a huge part of the human factors investigation. Not just feeling tired, but actual performance degradation because of long hours, disrupted sleep cycles, the cumulative effect.
What's interesting here is that it's UPS. They generally have a strong safety record, right?
Overall, yes, very strong, like most major carriers. But, and this is crucial context, this crash happened against a backdrop, the sources note, increasing operational strain across the whole industry, especially post-pandemic.
Okay, I want to dig into that. What exactly does increasing operational strain post-pandemic mean in practical terms for an airline like UPS?
It's systemic and it's relentless. Think about it. E-commerce exploded during and after the pandemic. That hasn't really slowed down. So carriers like UPS are operating at near peak holiday season levels, almost all year round now.
Wow, constant peak season.
Pretty much. Add to that the demands of just-in-time manufacturing. Everyone wants everything yesterday. That puts huge pressure on schedules, on turning planes around faster, and then the really big one, workforce shortages.
Right. We hear about that everywhere. Pilots.
Pilots, definitely, but also air traffic controllers, specialized maintenance crews, ground handlers. The whole ecosystem is stretched thin, fewer people doing more work, essentially.
And that directly impacts crew scheduling and potentially fatigue.
Absolutely. The FAA has rules, strict rules, about flight time and rest periods. But there's immense pressure to schedule crews right up to those legal limits. Maximize productivity, they call it.
But being legally rested isn't always the same as being actually fully rested and sharp.
That's the critical point. You can be compliant on paper, but if you're constantly hitting minimum rest flying complex schedules across time zones, the cumulative fatigue builds up. And that affects decision-making, reaction times. Precisely the things you need to be sharpest during takeoff or landing.
So if the investigation points towards human factors, it might not be just a simple mistake. It could be framed within this larger context of systemic pressure.
That's what the NTSB aims to understand. Was it an isolated error, or was it an error made more likely by the system itself being under immense strain? That's the tension.
The tension between speed, efficiency, cost driven by us, the consumers, and the market, and the hard limits of physics and human endurance.
You've nailed it. And this crash, tragically, might be a stark indicator of where that balance might be tipping. Hashtag internet theories and public reaction.
Okay, so that systemic pressure, that tension, it provides a really good segue into the other side of this story. The immediate and often chaotic public reaction online.
Oh yeah. The moment news breaks, the internet becomes its own investigation, doesn't it? Often way ahead of the facts.
It's like a sounding board for collective anxiety, maybe. People need explanations fast.
Exactly. They're trying to make sense of something shocking, often falling back on familiar narratives or looking for someone or something to blame quickly. Hashtag tag 3.1, trending speculation, and platform buzz.
So where did this online conversation really take off? Which platforms were buzzing the most?
Well, no surprise. X, formerly Twitter, was ground zero. You know, quick bursts, unverified video clips getting shared instantly, hashtags trending within minutes.
Right. High speed, low detail sometimes.
Yeah. But for the more, let's say, in-depth speculation, you saw it shift to Reddit, particularly the aviation subreddits, logistics forums, places where you have people with some real knowledge.
But also
Plenty armchair experts sharing theories with, let's say, varying degrees of evidence, high confidence, sometimes low information.
Okay. What were the dominant theories bubbling up there, often getting ahead of the official investigation?
They really leaned heavily into those areas we just discussed. Human factors and system vulnerability. Number one, by far, was pilot exhaustion. Fatigue.
Hashtag pilot fatigue. We saw that
It was huge. People sharing anecdotes, demanding UPS release schedules, directly linking that corporate pressure for speed to the potential for fatigue-related errors.
Any other major threads?
Yeah, another big one was the age of the aircraft. Cargo planes are often older airframes, maybe retired from passenger service.
Which just doesn't automatically mean unsafe, right?
Yeah.
If maintained properly.
Correct. Maintenance is key. But it feeds that narrative, that maybe cost-cutting leads to flying older planes harder, stretching maintenance intervals, speculation about whether specific components might have failed due to wear and tear. People were actually trying to dig up maintenance records online.
Wow. And what about the pressure aspect? Rushing.
Definitely a theme.
Yeah.
The idea that maybe crews felt pressured to cut corners, perhaps accept whether that was borderline or fly with a minor technical issue that should have grounded the plane, all to meet those tight delivery schedules. On-time performance pressure was a phrase popping up a lot.
And any more modern takes.
There was some chatter connecting severe turbulence or wind shear to climate change, suggesting weather patterns are becoming more unpredictable and dangerous for aviation. That adds another layer of anxiety. Hashtag tag 3.2 visuals and hashtags.
Speaking of anxiety, let's talk about those viral videos. Sources mentioned clips claiming to show the plane's final moments. That's always tricky territory.
Oh, it's a huge problem for getting accurate information out. We really have to stress this. The authenticity of most of those clips is completely unverified.
Right. People might be sharing old footage, something unrelated, or just a shaky, distant video that doesn't actually show anything clearly.
Exactly. They spread because they're dramatic. They tap into that immediate emotional need to see something, but they rarely have any real value for the investigation. The NTSB relies on radar data, flight recorders, official security footage, not random clips from Twitter. It's crucial for you, the listener, to be skeptical of those visuals.
Good point. But verified or not, those videos and the talk around them help cement the hashtags. What were the big ones telling us where public concern was focused?
Well, you had the obvious one, hashtag UPS plane crash. But beyond that, it really branched into two main areas, reflecting those theories. Hashtag aviation safety was big, showing general concern about the system.
And the other?
The really prominent one, the one that stuck, was hashtag pilot fatigue. Its persistence showed a deep public suspicion, maybe even conviction, that the demands of modern logistics are pushing crews too hard, potentially compromising safety for profit.
So that hashtag wasn't just about this one crash. It became a symbol for a wider concern about workforce well-being in high-pressure jobs.
Precisely. It elevates the conversation from what happened here to, is the system sustainable and safe for the people operating it? It puts that fatigue issue squarely on the table for regulators and the company, regardless of the final technical cause. Hashtag tag 3.3, broader cultural and technological questions.
When something like this happens with a cargo plane, the media often draws parallels to past incidents. Why do these rare freight crashes spark such intense scrutiny, maybe even more than passenger incidents sometimes?
It's partly because cargo aviation is usually invisible, right? It's this massive essential industry humming along in the background, making global commerce possible. We don't think about it until it breaks down.
Unlike passenger travel, which we experience directly.
Exactly. So when a cargo plane crashes, especially a major carrier like UPS, it's a sudden stark reminder of how fragile that hidden system can be. It highlights our dependence on it, and on the people, the pilots, the ground crews who make it work, often literally overnight. It puts a spotlight on the vulnerability of our just-in-time world.
And that vulnerability then sparks bigger questions, right, like about technology. Sources mention renewed debates about automation in the cockpit.
Yes, that conversation always comes back, especially when human error is suspected, even preliminarily. People start asking, couldn't technology have prevented this?
The argument being that AI or advanced automation could monitor for fatigue or handle tricky situations like wind shear better than a human.
That's the pro-automation argument. Minimize human variability, let the computer fly more, especially during demanding phases or when the crew might be compromised. Reduce errors through code.
But there's a flip side to that coin, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. The big concern is over-reliance. If pilots become too dependent on automation, do their basic flying skills, their ability to diagnose and manually handle complex, unexpected failures, things the automation wasn't programmed for start to erode.
De-skilling, essentially.
Exactly. Automation is great for routine stuff, reducing workload in cruise flight, but when things go seriously wrong, especially near the ground, you need highly skilled humans who can think outside the box and physically fly the airplane. This crash inevitably forces that debate again. How do we use technology to assist pilots without accidentally replacing their critical judgment and skills?
Okay, let's pivot to the analysis part. We've got the known facts, the official process, the public reaction and theories. Now, what does the NTSB likely focus on as they synthesize all this, and what are the bigger implications here? Hashtag tag 4.1, the investigation process and likely focus.
Right. The NTSB's job now is complex. They're not looking for one single cause in isolation. They're piecing together that chain of events we talked about, the interplay between the plane, the environment, and the crew.
So not just mechanical failure or human error, but how they might have combined. Can you give a hypothetical example of how that synthesis works?
Sure. Imagine the flight data recorder shows, say, a gradual loss of hydraulic pressure starting a few minutes before impact. Not instantly catastrophic, maybe.
Okay.
In perfect weather, maybe the crew identifies it, runs the checklist, declares an emergency, has time to manage it. But what if that hydraulic issue peaks just as they encounter severe, unforecasted turbulence or that strong crosswind we mentioned? And maybe, just maybe, the human factors team finds evidence the crew was at the tail end of a long duty period, maybe dealing with cumulative fatigue. Suddenly, their capacity to manage that mechanical problem while battling the weather, while potentially not being at peak cognitive performance, it collapses.
So the final report wouldn't just blame the hydraulics or the weather or fatigue, but the specific fatal combination.
Precisely. It details that sequence, that convergence. That's what probable cause often looks like in complex accidents. It's a chain, not a single broken link.
And that human factors investigation, looking into workforce resilience. How deep do they go on things like schedules and rest?
Oh, very deep. They scrutinize the pilot schedules for days, even weeks leading up to the event. Did they meet FAA rest requirements? Yes or no? But also, how were those requirements met? Were they constantly getting minimum rest? Did they cross multiple time zones? Were there delays that ate into rest periods?
So compliance versus actual fitness for duty.
Exactly. They're looking for patterns, for scheduling creep that might look legal on paper but contributes to real-world fatigue. It's about the reality of rest, not just the regulation.
And this intense focus, especially if human factors or systemic pressures are highlighted, must put pressure back on the companies, right? On their risk management.
Absolutely. An incident like this forces a hard look at corporate risk management. Regulators, insurers, even internal auditors will ask tough questions. Are your performance targets, like on-time arrivals, fast turnarounds, inadvertently creating pressure that encourages unsafe decisions?
So risk management isn't just about checking the engines, it's about the operational culture.
It has to be. It's about managing the risk that comes from pushing the system, machines, and people constantly towards maximum efficiency. There will likely be renewed pressure on UPS and others to build in more buffer, more resilience, even if it costs more. Hashtag tag 4.2 economic and global commerce impact.
Let's talk about those costs. Beyond the tragedy, there's the economic reality. Cargo aviation is fundamental to how the world works now.
It's the invisible engine, really. UPS alone operates thousands of flights daily, moving a huge volume of global trade. When a large freighter like this is lost, the ripple effects start immediately.
Financially, obviously, insurance, the lost plane, the cargo.
Hundreds of millions, easily. Whole loss, cargo liability,
Yeah.
the immediate financial hit is massive.
But for our listener, what's the impact they might feel, even indirectly? What does the disruption look like on the ground?
Well, several things. First, if that plane was carrying critical parts for a factory, that production line might stop. If it had high-demand goods, you might see temporary shortages or price bumps for those specific items. Real, tangible impact.
And logistically, for UPS's network.
The whole network has to adjust, instantly. That lost capacity has to be covered. Other planes get rerouted, schedules get shuffled, potentially causing delays on completely different routes as they scramble to fill the gap left by the crashed aircraft.
So losing one plane doesn't just affect that one route, it stresses the entire system trying to compensate.
Exactly. It highlights the interconnectedness, but also the potential fragility when operating with very little slack. It forces companies like UPS to reevaluate their contingency planning, their fleet management, how much redundancy they need versus how lean they want to operate.
It's that balance again, efficiency versus resilience.
Yes. This crash is a brutal reminder that maximizing efficiency without maintaining enough resilience can make the whole system vulnerable. It forces a reassessment of how much speed and cost-cutting the global supply chain can sustain before safety margins erode too far. The cost of failure is just too high.
A system-wide safety check, essentially, triggered by one tragic event.
A very expensive, very tragic safety audit, yes, with consequences that are both regulatory and internal for the companies involved. It's a moment forcing that difficult conversation about balancing profits and safety. Hashtag tag outro.
So as we wrap up this exploration, I think the main takeaway for you, our listener, is really about navigating the information overload.
Separating the signal from the noise.
Right. Understanding something this complex means looking at the verified facts, what the NTSB finds, what the FAA confirms, the aircraft details, the known weather, and distinguishing that from the speculation, the online theories like hashtag pilot fatigue.
Both parts of the story matter, the official investigation and the public concern, but knowing which is key. The evidence drives the outcome.
It really demands critical thinking, especially when emotions are running high after a tragedy.
Absolutely.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. If we accept that operational strain is a real factor in industries like logistics, how far do we push automation as the solution?
Yeah.
At what point does relying too much on tech potentially undermine the crucial human skills needed for those rare, catastrophic moments when the automation fails or doesn't apply? It's a tricky balance.
It is. A fundamental question for the future of aviation and logistics.
Well, thank you for joining us as we unpack the complexity surrounding the UPS cargo crash.
Glad we could explore it.
Next time on Trending Unpacked, we're shifting gears completely into the world of politics. I'll be looking at Zohran Mamdani, the politician who's really shaking up New York's political playbook. Hope you can join us then.